Okay, the purpose of this video is to attempt to demonstrate how you might prepare a sample if you are using Dumas. This is based on what I've seen happening in a number of labs that are doing a single sample analysis, and they're using an aliquot of the sample for both their Dumas and their ashing procedure. So that's what we're going to talk about. So you'll see here I have a mortar and pestle set up. I've got a spatula, a sample spatula. I've got some scissors. I've got a brush. In this case it's a cosmetic brush with a rubber band to stiffen it up. Ideally you could use a small, like 1-inch paintbrush. You could either cut the bristles down short or again use a rubber band like is done on this one. And then of course I have the soluble dietary fiber or TDF bag, the lower bag that's run in the ANCOM system, and the upper bag, the IDF bag, that have already been processed. So what do you do in order to prepare it? What you'll do is you'll take, in this case I'll start with the bottom bag, the SDF bag, and this is after drying and everything, so you can see I've done the heat sealing and things like that. It's been dried, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut at that seal. I don't want to cut into sample. I want to cut just so this thing will split open. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. In this case I'm going to tap it down a little bit because I don't want the sample to be in it. And I'm cutting off the tip. Now notice as well that I have colored paper here. I've done that so in case anything does drop, then I can see it. Obviously the darker the paper the better. And by the way, I probably should be wearing gloves so something doesn't stick to my hand. But for demonstration purposes, I think this will work. So I've cut it and opened it. I'm now going to pop it. And you can see since I've opened the bottom, sample is pouring out of it quite nicely. There is a benefit to having the diatomaceous earth in the bottom bag. It does make the sample come out a little bit easier. In many cases, when I cut the top, when I do what I just did, the whole thing would pop open. That makes it the easiest way. Because it didn't, I'm going to have to come in here and give it another little cut because I want that top bag to split open. Okay. Because ultimately I want to be able to have this bag open right up so then I can take a brush. Well, actually what I'll do is I'll start with using the spatula because I can scrape off material. And how it comes off is going to have a little bit dependence on the type of sample and things like that. But again, this is after drying and everything, so it's coming off pretty easily. Scraping it, scraping it. Again, I don't want to lose any sample on this. So now I can brush. And you can ultimately see that the goal is to get all the sample off. And I'll just keep doing that with a spatula, with a brush, until I'm confident that I've got all of the sample off, because I want my aliquot to be accurate. I want it to be a good representative sample. So I can look at, for instance, I could see some samples still there. So I'm just going to go through the whole process, and that's the goal. I want to get all the sample off, whether I'm using the brush and the spatula. If any dropped onto the paper, like in this case, I see a little bit, so I can now take that paper, put it up, and get all the sample down. Again, that would be the benefit of wearing gloves too. It would be sticking to your hands. But once I've scraped all that sample off, then I'm going to use my pestle, and I'm going to basically get that sample ground up into a nice representative mix. And quite frankly, this is going to be one of the more critical phases, because you want to make sure you don't have all sorts of different sized particles and things like that. Piece just came in my hand. I'm going to get it ground up. So that's really the process. Get it ground. You want to get a good representative sample. So I've taken all the sample out of the bag. And quite frankly, I do the exact same thing with the upper bag. The disadvantage of the upper bag is, unless I choose to, I do not have diatomaceous earth in, so it can take a little bit more to get the sample out. If you are doing Dumas, it would probably be a good idea to go ahead and use diatomaceous earth in the upper bag as well. On our spreadsheets, we do give you the opportunity to add diatomaceous earth in the upper if you so desire. From a filtration standpoint in our system, it is not needed, but again, if your goal is to do Dumas, then it would probably be a good idea to make it as easy as it was for the lower bag to get the sample out. So once I've got the nice sample in there, that is when I'm going to draw my sample out to do Dumas. I believe in most micro Dumas, so we're talking about a quarter of a gram of sample, maybe even less. Again, that's going to be what your thimble can hold. And then just remember that when you do that, you are going to have to multiply it up in order to represent the entire sample. So if you did a quarter gram, you're going to have to bring it up by 4. You would do the same thing for the upper bag as well. From an ashing standpoint, many of the people that are doing that process are taking an aliquot, a similar aliquot, for their ashing process. Again, you're going to have to bring it up mathematically to represent the entire sample when you're done. In our formula, there is a value factored in for blank bag based on the hundreds, if not thousands, of blanks we have run. That does account for any ash in the filter bag. And you can also run blanks yourself and be able to modify that factor if over time you see that changing. But that's a simplified demonstration of how you could look at doing a Dumas by taking an aliquot after removing the sample from the filter bags. I hope that helps.